Hello and welcome back to the Rise of Benz YouTube channel. And coming up in today's video, I break a few things, completely destroyed, then we fix them, and then we can get into the fun stuff of taking the M104 Turbo on a little test drive. Bang bang! So this is my M104 3.2 litre turbo swap W203, and it's closer than ever before to being called finished. But calling a project car completely built and finished is a bit far-fetched. Over the past 3 years, I've built 2 sets of engine mounts. I've built 2 different style turbo manifolds and then 3 different style intake manifolds. And obviously, of course, a bunch of other work. Now, there's just a couple of smaller things I want to sort out before I put this thing on Facebook Marketplace and cash in on that ROI. Yes, it's a bit sad if I do end up selling it, but I'm ready to move on to bigger and better things. Taking all my experience and all my knowledge that I've learned from doing this and going bigger and better. This was my first boosted Benz build ever, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. When I say move on to bigger and better things, is maybe start investing in some kind of workshop. I'm not sure yet, but for now we have some work to do. Now, because I want to sell this car to someone, I do need to make sure that it's reliable or somewhat reliable and then safe. I mean, I am fine with taking chances, sometimes dangerous, but I'm fine with that. I can't sell a dangerous car. So the first thing to sort out is the wheels. So I took the wheels off the C400, got it on here, but the thing is with these wheels, they do need to run with the spacers, the wheel spacers. So the rear spacers, I think they are about 35 millimeters. They are fine. So the way they work is the spacer itself bolts onto the wheel hub, and then the wheel bolts onto the spacer with the spacer studs. So that's fine and sorted. The problem is on the front. In the beginning of the week, this car was not drivable because of these front wheels. So the way I had the wheel on there, I found 6 long studs laying around just to get the wheels on there. But in today's video, I need to sort out the hub. So I want to get some studs in there. I just had to wait a couple of days for those to come in. But the plan is to get the wheel hub off the car, and then I can drill out the threaded holes to pull in the new studs. Let me tell you, that was easier said than done. Now, let me start this off by saying, if you are anything like me, please leave any type of suspension work to the professionals. A quick brake pad change is fine and simple enough to do, but working on a car's complicated suspension is definitely not something you want to mess around with, as I'll soon find out the hard way. First up is unbolting the brake caliper. So you start off by removing the brake pad wear sensor, then remove the plate that holds the brake pads in the caliper, and then gently, using a hammer, get the 2 brake pad pins out. This is probably not the way to do this, but hey, it works for me. I would use a C-clamp to compress the brake pads and then slide them out. With the brake pads out of the way, I could unbolt the brake caliper and get that moved out of the way without needing to remove the brake line. A neat trick for this little bolt that holds the brake disc on the hub is giving it a gentle tap with a hammer, and they always seem to come out pretty easy. Now, I think you can already pick up on this. The hammer seems to be my favorite tool, and I always seem to reach for that damn thing without putting a lot of thought into it. And soon enough, I learned another lesson. But a couple of minutes later, I managed to somehow get that thing off the hub, and we can move on to getting to the wheel bearing nut. By gently removing the dust cover, we now have access to that nut. At least that was just about the easiest thing to get off. At about this point is where things started to go south. The hub should just be able to slide out at this point, but oh no. Again, with the hammer and enough time, you can really do some damage. The bearing at the back did not want to budge. And well, as you can see, it's not good news. Guys, this is bad. This is really bad and definitely not what I was going for. But anyways, the next day, so I kind of took a step back and took last night to think about this and kind of figure out a new plan of attack for this situation. As you saw, I really destroyed this wheel hub. So this rear seal is completely destroyed, as well as this bearing. So this was the issue. I had to use a bit of force to get that thing off and ended up bending the hell out of it. While I was busy removing or trying to remove the hub, I did watch a few videos and it's not supposed to be this difficult. It usually just slides off. Won't be able to use that again, so I'll need to either find a new hub, or maybe you can find like a kit and just replace the bearing and that seal. But to continue on this, we are pretty lucky that we have a car full of spares right next to the M104 turbo. So as we know, those wheels came off the C400. So back when I just got the wheels, I had to go through all the trouble to get the wheel studs into this thing, because when you run those wheels without the spacers, they are tucked into the fender quite a bit and it just looks bad. I think I'm just gonna remove the whole knuckle, left and right, and then switch these knuckles with those knuckles. I will be keeping the brakes on that car because it does have the upgraded brakes, and then I'll keep the brakes on this one as well. I'm just gonna be removing the knuckles, so loosening up the shock, removing that, all the control arms, and then swap out the knuckles. Hopefully they fit, but I think they will. Probably should have went with this idea from the start, but here we are. I honestly thought this was not going to be a big deal, but yeah, so I will be running the old compressor wheels on the C400, so we don't really even need the studs. But I do like having the studs in there when you change wheels. It just makes it a bit easier. Let's get started on this. Get started on this side, getting this knuckle off, so this piece over here. So I need to disconnect that, and then the shock, and then I can pull that out and see if it'll fit on that. Let's get to work. I was curious to see how long this will take me if I jump in and get this done. I got started at around 9:30, removing all 4 knuckles from both the cars. I'm not going to tell you how to do this because I'm not really supposed to be in here, but taking things apart is really not that hard. Problem usually occurs when the time comes to put everything back together. Righty, lefty, loosey. Come on. Basics. A couple of minutes later, I got this messed up part off and I could move on over to the C400, disassembling everything so that we can compare these two next to each other and see if this plan will even work. Very much the same process over on this side. Things look a little bit different, but everything basically works the same way. Now I do have one stud missing on this hub, but once I get it off the car, I'll go ahead and sort that out. Well, a short time later, I was able to put these two parts next to each other to make sure this will fit. Luckily for me, these two knuckles turned out to be exactly the same. Also, seeing the two knuckles side by side, not too long ago I did a full suspension refresh on the C400, so the parts on that thing looks brand new. Now that I know for a fact this whole idea is going to work perfect, I wanted to fix that missing stud. So all I had to do is weld a bit of meat onto it, because back when we did this, we made the first hole a bit too big and it doesn't really have anything to hold on to. Then I could get the stud back into the hub, making sure it goes in tight so that we don't run into this issue again. Eventually I got a nice rhythm going, and in no time we'll have everything put back together. For peace of mind, I also added a drop of Loctite onto all the bolts. I really don't want anything coming loose on the suspension. One down, one to go. Over on the passenger side, I had to fix some threads on the one ball joint, because again, I underestimated the destructive nature of my hammer. So I just had to do some cleanup work with the angle grinder, and in no time I got that side done and we can get the car back onto the ground. And the time is 16:07. What a day. And there we have it. Final step is just locking down the new hardware, and with that done, you know what that means. It's time for a test drive. And that's exactly what I'm currently doing. Because number one, I haven't driven the car since it's been tuned very much, so I wanted to go out and enjoy it a bit. And then number two is check a couple of things. Because I messed around with the wheel speed sensors and all that, I wanted to make sure that still works and all the gauges on the cluster still work. I made a few changes on the boost reference lines that controls the wastegate. So I wanted to make sure that the boost doesn't exceed 0.5 bar, just because the car is tuned only up until 0.5 bar of boost. So long story short, with some boost leaks, you can manipulate the wastegate to behave differently. So I will put the car in third gear and do a pull and see what boost level we're at, and then floor it, keeping an eye on the boost gauge. Oh, by the way, I still need to connect up this oil pressure gauge, so don't worry about that. Barely any boost at all. I would pull over, do a few changes to the vacuum lines, and then try it again until I hit that 0.5 bar mark. Mounted my little microphone on the back of the car as well as inside the engine bay to get the exhaust and the turbo noises, but it just blows out the mic. Not a very good microphone. The car sounds nothing like that, but hey, I tried. So I think that's enough testing for today. Let's head on back home and get into that last little job. This thing sounds amazing. You just can't beat that inline 6-cylinder noise. So, it's a couple of days later. I always underestimate how long these things take to do. I don't know if I'm slow or special. Between the whole wheel bearing situation and also editing this video that I have been busy on for the past 2 full days, I don't have any time left in this week's video to get started on the next little job, which is gonna be to relocate the surge tank. My plan is to move that somewhere where it's not inside the car, so under the rear bumper or something like that. But with that, we have the exhaust very close to it, so I still have to decide what exactly I want to do with that, but I want to get that relocated. And then the last thing I want to do is to do something about the horrible paintwork. So in the next video, I want to get started on that, get that paintwork looking fresh again. But for now, I'm going to finish this video off for you guys. I also have all that staring right at me, giving me some horrible nightmares until I decide what I'm going to do about that whole situation. But speaking about the C400, I would also much rather be working on that and continuing getting the twin supercharger setup completed. But I am waiting for a boost gauge. I need a fuel pump. I need maybe a fuel rail. Any of you guys have an extra fuel pump laying around or anything like that, let me know. Maybe I'll take it off your hands. And if you've watched up until this point of the video, I really do appreciate it. Please don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, and then I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.